In my video on binary opposition, I taught you how to analyze cultures in specific terms, an exceptionally useful tool for organizing your thinking around cultures. But because I care about you, I would like to immunize you against some of the dangers that come with this kind of thinking. In the West, and I'm sure other places as well, we have something referred to as a scientistic culture, not to be confused with the word scientific. Scientific implying that the scientific method was applied properly and honestly. No, when I use the word scientistic, I mean something that imitates or resembles science. Simply put, there is a tendency in Western culture to favor explanations, descriptions, and solutions that sound scientific, but whose actual scientific merit is questionable, dubious, or unknown. I'll give you some examples that I'm sure you'll have run across in your life at some point. Do you have a friend, or maybe just someone you know, that seems to have a medical or psychological excuse for anything and everything that's wrong with them? Someone who is a bit too quick to conclude they have dyslexia when they're just confused for a moment. Maybe you know someone who follows every food trend, who says, oh, this and this ingredient, oh, that's horrible for you, it's a health hazard, but this and this one's great, should be in all your meals. Or those people consumed by IQ, thinking it's the be-all, end-all measure of a man and his mind. So when I taught you that tool for analyzing culture, it made you vulnerable to thinking that culture is a rigid science, a rigid machine, a rigid system. While it is a useful tool, it is important to remember that culture is no more mechanical than we are. Humans are, in a way, mechanical, but obviously they're not made of metal, and they're not made in some sort of standardized way. The same is for culture. It has mechanical properties, but it's no more standardized or metallic than we are. Each person engages with their culture in a different way, placing more value on one aspect of their culture than another. You might think Christmas is the most important part of your culture, where another person might think their values on education is the most important part of their culture. Then of course it can get even more varied. The specific meaning of each aspect of culture can vary from person to person. The words true meaning of Christmas should come to mind. Ask someone that question. You'll get answers with more or less a similar theme, but ultimately you will get a different answer every single time. Based on that, culture has a kind of nebulous nature to it. Nebulous, meaning something that occupies space, but whose precise size and shape is difficult to tell. Just as with Christmas, it's easy to see the basic meanings, and so it takes up space. But the precise meaning of Christmas is difficult to tell, which means its precise size and shape is difficult to tell. Despite that, culture is still kind of mechanical in nature. When I say mechanical, I mean to say that culture has a system of ideas, just like I taught you. Just as something mechanical is a system of moving parts, so too is culture a system of interacting ideas. I'd like to give you an example of this, but to be honest, this sort of deserves its own video. My point is that I want you to know that culture can be defined, it can be studied. There is no reason to surrender culture to the mushy, unknowable blob of something that is entirely subjective. But I also don't want you to fall into scientistically thinking that culture can be understood and manipulated like a machine. I don't want you to think that culture can be designed, at least not easily or simply. It is not a car. You cannot simply add and remove parts. Culture does change, but it does so organically, just like the humans that create them. Though I guess organic in a different sense. Now that I've given you the tools to analyze culture and given you my warning, you and I can begin looking at specific cultures. Let's see if we can learn something neat together.